What's up, everybody?
Welcome to this week's episode of Stream Squad. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm Angela.
And I am Jimmy. How's
And
it going?
hey, I am Dan.
We've got Dan behind the camera, you guys.
So we were going to have Nick join us as well, but I don't know. If you're out at social media marketing world, you might have talked to him, and he's a little under the weather, and he barely has a voice to begin with. So we told him to just stay on the sidelines and we'll cover
him a
for
break.
him. Yeah, trying to make him not have to talk. But I hear him on a phone call in the other room right now. So
Somebody said he's got that conference crud.
Yeah,
the con crud.
Con crud.
Con crud. So try to avoid that con crud if you can, everybody. But,
Yeah.
So we're staying out here. He's staying in there.
That's the plan. Quarantine Nick into
Yes.
the back room.
He will be missed.
Excellent. So I think we've got a really cool show, a lot of interesting topics to talk about. So Angela, if you want to go ahead and jump right into it, we'll start off with some industry news.
Sure. So our first industry news piece this week is about YouTube Stories app. So this is something that's still in beta, so some people do not know about YouTube Stories yet. On the surface, it looks similar to what you would expect from Snapchat or Instagram Stories or Facebook Stories, where you hold your phone out and you have all kinds of cool features. But one thing that YouTube is currently testing as of March 1st is a green screen component to their Stories app. So what they've done is they've trained UI to be able to separate the background from the foreground of any given frame, and then using the technology, it's able to predict, with a mask, what's going to continue being the background. And doing that, you get this really cool green screen effect where you can put in a background of your own. You can make it just a solid white or solid black background, anything like that. If someone enters the frame or the shot changes, it'll automatically make a new mask so that you do keep that alive. But the change has been going really well so far with the beta testers. They're able to apply changes over 100 frames per second for iPhone 7s and higher. They've also done some testing on the Google Pixel 2, and it's applying over 40 frames per second. So both are doing really well, and with this kind of AI, it's really exciting on what can be to come for other apps.
Yeah, I wonder you can kind of create, I think the future that's going to be creating custom backgrounds for different brands or different things. Like Snapchat has the special tags that you can have based on your geolocation. So I bet there's going to be something like, just think of like an amusement park. If you're there and you want to go live, they might have like a special...
Kind of like a Snapchat filter?
Yeah, that's what I meant,
Yeah.
Snapchat filter, but it'd be like the YouTube green screen filters. So, and what's important to note is you don't need an actual green screen behind you. It just works with your background. It's using artificial intelligence. It's figuring out what is the part in the screen that's staying still, and then it also is figuring out what's behind you. So it just kind of predictively figuring out what's the background and what's the foreground. So it's pretty neat. It's not really a new technology per se, but just to put it into something that's going to be widespread is pretty neat. Just to have that as a kind of another feature added, I think that's kind of neat.
I know when Apple just did their thing in the iPhone 10, is it the 10 or the X? What are we calling it these days? I never know.
I've heard both. When I'm reading it, I read it as iPhone X, but when I say it, I say iPhone 10. So
right.
I do
So
both.
who knows? The iPhone 10 has that
whatever
with the selfie camera, I guess, where you can block out and change the background. So
I think that's using some infrared though.
Right. Yeah.
So that's figuring out depth, but that's not. If you have an iPhone, you can technically write that into the API.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah, I see Chris Carson here in the comments says Switcher Studio needs this. How
What's
great
up,
would that
Chris?
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, that'd
Yeah,
be pretty cool, right?
be? We see Chris here, Dominic's here, Carlos says hey. I see Hot Rock's in the comments, or Hot Rock has joined. So
Hey,
hello everybody,
everyone.
thank you for tuning in.
And Chris, Dan told me that you liked our video, and I just want to make sure everybody knows you can just smash that love button too. So you don't just have to like it; you can also love it. So I'm looking at you, Chris. Set the trend. Set the trend, man.
So yeah, that's a great, cool new thing from YouTube. Is there any other stats we have on that, or are we ready to?
That is most of what it is. So again, the YouTube Stories app and this feature is on beta. It's slowly being rolled out to users. So if you don't have access to the app or the feature just yet, hang on, it will be coming to you. But so far, all of the all the testing YouTube's been doing has been positive. So at this point, they are full steam ahead to keep rolling it out to all users.
Cool.
Awesome. So, yeah, let's talk about this next piece, which is kind of a cool, kind of a neat little thing to talk about, and that's, of course, the iPhone SDK is 10 years old.
Yeah.
I think it was a couple days ago.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, iPhone SDK.
Yeah.
Angela, you got some news about that or some stats?
So the iPhone SDK initially came out in February 2008. So Craig Hockenberry of TechCrunch actually wrote up an article demonstrating, kind of chronicling what he did when he got the first iPhone and what led up to the release of the SDK. So of course the first iPhone came out the end of June 2007, and just to kind of learn more about how it worked, they noticed similarities between the iPhone and the Mac off the bat. Developers like Craig basically jailbroke the phone just to play around with it and learn more of how it worked. By doing that, they saw it did basically have the same type of operating system as Mac OS. They found that the operating system it was using was Unix, which is open source. So they began developing apps. At this point, Craig had his own Twitter app for Mac that he was able to make for the iPhone. But the problem was it was hard to get these apps that all the developers were making into customers' hands. So just 5 months after the release of the first iPhone, Steve Jobs in November 2007 announced they would put out an official SDK, and that came out in late February 2008. So we're a little behind by a couple of days, but still the 10-year mark. And this brought about, the App Store. This brought about the OpenGL framework. So then all of these developers could actually get their apps into the App Store, and that way it wasn't them, emailing and sending the app to different users. Users could easily just download it straight to their iPhone.
Yeah, man, that's so neat. But hey, anybody out there who's still using, or anybody who remembers Cydia, that's one of the main. It's kind of like the App Store for jailbroken iPhones. But hey, if you've got your favorite Cydia apps that you remember from back in the day, post those in the comments so we can all reminisce together. I just remember before your carrier was involved, you could tether your phone, and you had to have a special jailbroken app to do that. I can't remember which one it was called because my first iPhone was iPhone 4, I think. So I don't remember what it was, but that was a long time ago. But do you guys have any favorite apps you remember? Did anybody ever use jailbroken phones?
So I was really late to the party with the whole. I remember the iPhones coming out, and I was really excited about getting one of those Razor phones.
Yeah.
That flipped up and closed.
Not really an SDK for that.
No,
available
not at all,
anymore.
But I was pretty far behind it. Chris in here again does say Cydia was awesome.
Yes.
So Chris is definitely with you.
Yeah,
He remembers that.
Yeah.
I joined the iPhone club pretty early. It was actually a 19th birthday gift to myself back in 2009. I got the second gen iPhone, but I never used any of the jailbroken apps because about a month into having that first iPhone, something locked up on it. I freaked out, rushed to the Apple store, and they saw my warranty was in effect and gave me a new one. I found out about jailbreaking right after that, learned it voided the warranty, and since then have been terrified that I'll be out of $700.
We're not advocating for you to mess with your terms of service in any way, but you all know. You know somebody.
I
Everybody
was
knows somebody.
too much of a goody two shoes to do any of that stuff too. I always thought about it. I'm like, man, this would be so cool, but yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna break it, and then I'm not gonna have a phone anymore. So
yeah,
I will say, remember to back up your iPhones as often as possible, because even though it's been years, I still have the original Flappy Bird on here.
All right.
Because it's backed up on my iTunes, and whenever I get a new phone, it automatically installs. So
that's pretty cool.
I don't think that counts as a Cydia app, does it?
But no,
it's a piece of history.
Yeah, still a piece of history, and that's kind of what the big topic here is, the SDK, which has made a lot of things possible, including Switcher Studio when you think about it. So we are thankful for it.
Awesome. Well, I think that's kind of a nice little trip down memory lane for some talking about the old iPhones and all that good stuff. Before we get into the live video strategy, I see another awesome user in here, Brandon with the Restream, says, hey, what's up? So
What's up,
Brandon.
happy seeing him
How's
in
it going?
here. But yeah, Angela, if you want to go ahead and introduce what we've got for our live video strategy, I think Jimmy's got some information on that as well.
Sure. So last week, actually, in our industry segment, we went over, some of the changes for using Facebook ads, with your Facebook Live video. But that brought about the question of what are ways you can do advertisements on your Facebook Lives, especially if you aren't meeting those thresholds to get Facebook Live advertisements on your videos. So Jimmy's actually got a couple of things he's going to discuss with you guys and just let you know, how you can help people out with your advertisements.
Yep, thank you, Angela. So, yeah, there's a lot of rules that you can't break with Facebook. You have to remember that Facebook is trying to make money on ads too. So there's going to be some scrutiny over exactly how you are doing advertisements. For example, Dan kind of pointed this out to me. He has the phrasing down exactly, but if you're going to use pre-roll videos, you have to be very clear that your pre-rolled video is not just an advertisement or a commercial. That's kind of reserved for Facebook to do. Now,
they literally tell you if you schedule your Facebook Live broadcast. I mean, I read it out right before we went live here, and it says, make sure your pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll, all of that is not an advertisement or there's no third party, and make sure what you are doing is live. So, two important things.
So if that is not enough, for every time before you go live, you're getting reminded. So that's just one of the first things you keep in mind. You have to kind of get a little bit more creative when it comes to doing partnerships and advertising. I think number one thing to remember is that if you are going to do some sort of ads, just think about the purpose. They could help you fund your broadcast. So maybe you want to get some new gear. Maybe you want to just maintain some of the things that you already have. And it also might help you purchase some of the products that you're going to showcase if that's what you're doing with your live stream. So just kind of keep in mind that that's one of the main reasons you might want to do ads in the first place, is to kind of fund some of that. Another thing to think of if you're going to approach advertisers is just remember the incentive that you're trying to provide for them. Maybe one of the things you can do is say, hey, I would like to make a coupon code for your business, and just put our name on it, and it'll show you that we're going to send people your way. So whether it's like going to a restaurant, Dan had a great idea earlier. I'm going to ask him about that here in a minute, but just give them a way to show that what you're doing for them is going to send people their way. And another thing is maybe you're not taking any money, and it's just a symbiotic relationship. The term that we like to use here was value added. Just do cross promotions with companies that have products that work really well with you. For example, iOgrapher is one of the companies. I don't think we made a dime for me just saying that, but we all know that iOgrapher makes really cool devices, and they sell a lot of merchandise that makes it really easy to do live video. So in any way that we can help people do more live video, we know that they're going to be able to send people our way too. So just try to find people that you can partner with like that, and maybe they can do some cross promotion for you. You can talk about their products and services, and then they'll talk about yours. Working it that way. But ultimately, I guess what you want to do is you need to make the case to them that you can accomplish some goal for them. So maybe it's like page likes. You can say, hey, I'm going to send people to your page and tell them to like your page, and I'll put a graphic up that shows them how to get there. Maybe it's telling them to subscribe to some newsletter that you've got on your website. That's one thing. The coupon code's always an option. That's going to kind of drive some sort of result. It's going to send people there. And maybe lastly, it's like just visiting or attending some sort of event that the other place is hosting. So if you're kind of reaching out to other people, just try to keep some of these things in mind. It might be useful to make a strategic partnership with somebody else. It's always good to network. It's always good to have other friends that are doing things similar to what you're doing. So those are just a few pointers that I tried to gather together just about advertising. I mean, ultimately in Switcher, you can make a full screen title card that kind of suggests what people do, and that's kind of built into the app under the graphics pane. Dan, what were you telling me earlier about making partnerships with people, and like how you can maybe do like a year-long sort of sponsorship opportunity? How would that possibly work?
Right. So that's something I've worked with in the past quite a bit, is working with radio stations, and they do a lot of things where I think you mentioned earlier, value added. And one of the things that we've seen work, or I think is a really good idea, is Switcher Studio is a software, it's a subscription, so it's $2.99 for a year. But Like let's say you just want to do something as simple as have a logo in the corner for your title sponsor or something. You could, if you're in this situation, we're going to go back to the radio stations. Let's talk about like high school sports or just a sporting event where, you know, you already have these people, these professional radio guys out there doing these play-by-plays. So why not have a video going at the same time? And you could easily go out to maybe a local car dealership or anyone, any big company locally and be like, hey, we're going to put your logo in the corner. We'll charge you $299 for the year, $500, whatever it ends up being that you want to charge them. And from that, you're able to pay for Switcher, maybe get a little more, and then they're getting more value added. And you might be able to do other things like just take a picture of what's going on at like or a logo of one of your sponsors or one of your radio sponsors, excuse me, I should say. Mm-hmm. And during these timeouts or breaks, the radio's already playing those broadcast or those commercials, so you can just add those images on, and you know, you can just go with that. And I mean, it's just another way to look at it, and there are things to do instead of doing that pre-roll video and just being able to tell people like, you know, this is just going to be part of the package that you're getting. The full thing is getting stuff on the live
It's as
video.
simple as a reminder too. Like you just remember that at certain points throughout the night. I mean, if you watch any sort of sporting event, you're going to remember. And tonight's brought to you by those people paid for that to happen. So there is always an opportunity for that. I think it's going to be important too. You just really got to know your audience. If you know who your audience is, then you're going to have the ability to say, I know that this is going to be getting into I'm going to get into the eyes and ears of these people who are going to be viewing this. And so that's another good way for you to kind of figure out who could benefit from me advertising for them. So it might bring in just a little extra money that you didn't think about. You know, it could fund your subscription of Switcher easily if you're doing enough volume. So it could be that simple, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, that's just, like I said, that's just a couple different ways or things that we've seen people do with Switcher and to kind of do ads on their videos.
Yeah, just don't forget about the title cards. You can always go in and make a new graphic, and it can say whatever you want, or it can just be a text overlay. If somebody who maybe you want to advertise for, they can prepare an entire graphic and give it to you. One thing I would say is if you actually approach anybody, tell them to tell you what to say. Like, you don't have to write it. It's not that hard. You're just like, hey, I'll spend 30 seconds talking about your service or your product if you want, and I'll do it for $10 per 30 seconds for the month. Yeah. For every time that I go live and I talk about it. So. And
it could be, you know, if you're worried about Facebook and sponsorship, you can always call these people partners or something like that. I think might sound a little bit better, like thanks to our partners for helping us put on this stream, things like that. I think that's a really good way to wrap this up. Thank you, Jimmy, for
and if anybody has any other ideas to share, please just put it in the comments. If you have you know, resources and stuff. I was looking up like the prices for advertising on podcasts, for example, and it gets pretty tricky with the number of users and viewers and what is the industry standard. So feel free, you know, look that kind of stuff up and see. And if anybody has any comments, just kind of throw them down there, and we'll kind of look through those later on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so moving on to our next segment, of course, is talking about questions that we see come up in the user group a lot. And the first one we're going to talk about, I think, while it applies definitely to Switcher Studio, applies to a lot of other apps as well, and that's getting stuff off of your iPads and iPhones in bulk without having to, you know, I mean, I always feel like when I'm moving pictures around, I delete them, but then they're still there, or you have to delete them from the cloud too, and you never know. So, Angela, I think you have some good information about this.
Sure. So, you know, again, this is something, as Dan mentioned, you can use just with Switcher Studio, or you can use for any of your apps. And what it is if you plug your iOS device into any computer that has iTunes, you can actually access the file storage in a lot of those apps. So it doesn't have to be your home computer, it doesn't have to be your main computer, it can be either a PC or a Mac. As long as it has iTunes, you'll just plug your device in. If it's the first time, you'll get a pop-up on your phone that asks, do you trust this device? And after that, you'll be able to see what's on the phone. So of course you've got, you know, your music, your movies, your podcasts, But once you've clicked on that device, over on the menu on the left-hand side, there's an option that says File Sharing. And once you click on File Sharing, it's going to show you a list of the apps where you can see exactly what's in them. And you can click on each app and see those specific files. Now with Switcher Studio, this is great if you need to add any kind of graphics or any kind of pre-recorded video. You can actually open up the file sharing part of iTunes and literally drag and drop the files that you need off your computer and directly onto your iPad or iPhone. It's not going to be a deletion from your computer, so the file is still going to be there, but it's an easy way to get it directly onto your device. And then when you go in Switcher Studio, you can easily import it. It's also good for exporting files. A lot of times we'll have users who have done a recording, and of course the default way to move their files is by saving it to the camera roll. But if it's a longer broadcast, they might not have the room to essentially double that space on their device. Or if it's a really long video and they're trying to upload that recording to Facebook or to YouTube afterwards, a lot of those apps, have restrictions that the main website doesn't, where if it's over 30 minutes or an hour, you can't do a mobile upload. So again, it works the same where you can plug your iPad or your iPhone into a computer, access file sharing in Switcher Studio, and literally just drag off your recordings onto your computer. And then from there, you can store them, you can upload them, anything you want. But again, this works for a lot of other apps as well, especially, photo and video editing apps, even, book and notes apps. So definitely play around with that. There's a lot of things you can do to get things onto your iPads and iPhones and to take things off. And personally, that's the way I love doing it.
I've always felt like the iPhone, just the management of any kind of files.
Yeah.
But especially pictures, like you've always got to go into your photos and then you've got to say, hit the bottom left button that says share to. It's like a square with an arrow out of it. And you're like ended up selecting one by one, and it's just not what we're used to on the computer. If you're managing a lot of assets, you're kind of used to this like entire window that's open, and you can hit Command A, and you've got everything, and you can move things around like that. So on the phone, it's meant to be mobile, so it's just kind of it's more narrowed down, and it's not really made to work with these bigger files. So iTunes is definitely it's not the most common way that you would work with other apps, but if you think of the way that Switcher works, it's just a great way to make sure that you're managing your files properly. You can see everything that's in there. In fact, just kind of a pro tip, there's actually, every time you make a text layer, there's even a little file that's saving all of those lower thirds and the graphics that you create. So if you know that you're going to have some that are always going to be there, it might not be a bad idea to just kind of grab those out of there too and just save them into a special folder on your computer. And there's also information about some of your external streams in there. It's kind of worth just poking around there just to see, but it's very easy to see the files that are recorded videos, and it's really easy to get those off of there. So any camera that is recorded video, you can plug that in. You could see it in the app, and any device that was the main switching device, it'll have its file, and I think it'll also have the journal file for it as well, so you can copy those things over. But it's not a really common thing everybody remembers to kind of go do, because you're used to just moving it from the app into the camera roll so you can share it. But this way, you can go directly into your phone through iTunes and put it where you need it to be. It's a really great way of doing it.
And one thing I love doing too, I've recommended this to a few users. It's something that you don't really think about normally. For anyone who uses Switcher Studio and does director mode, of course, once you're done, what you've got to do is, make sure all of those original devices are still connected on Wi-Fi or a hotspot, and then you've got to open that journal file and wait for the Wi-Fi to transfer all of that data onto the main switching device, and then after that it composes the document. And if you're in a limited Wi-Fi spot or you've got a hotspot that's running on data, a lot of times that can be really time consuming to do. It's actually quicker if you plug each of those remote cameras in one by one to your computer, drag them off into an individual folder, and then put all of those camera angles onto that main switching device. That way you don't have to connect anything else on Wi-Fi. As soon as you tap on the journal file, it's going to show that all of your camera angles are already there, and it actually composes a lot quicker. So I personally don't remember the last time I did a composition on Wi-Fi, but it's so much faster, especially for you guys doing these 2 or 3 hour broadcasts.
Yeah, that's how, as soon as we're done here, before we get going with the webinar, that's how I'm going to transfer everything and compile the video to get ready for an upload to YouTube later. So yeah, that's how we do it. And there is an article that I posted a little bit ago in the comments there that should help people out.
Awesome.
So great. Yeah, I see someone saying Dana in here says Angel saved me with this. So yeah, I'm sure.
Ah,
I'm glad.
Dana, I know who you are.
Yeah. Great. I think we have a bonus second question here. That Dominic, if you're still here, I think you said it really well, and that's why we wanted to talk about the YouTube and Facebook music libraries and give you a little information about that.
Yeah, so, we've mentioned a lot on the show that, Facebook and YouTube especially are big sticklers for copyright. They will delete your video or mute your video if you are playing copyrighted music, even if it's just in the background of where you are. But we have announced that over the past few months, both YouTube and Facebook have created their own music libraries of songs that can be used for your live videos or recorded videos. But one thing we've noticed that's starting, to kind of trip up a few people is Facebook has authorized their own music library and YouTube's authorized their own music library. So let's say you do a broadcast to Facebook and you want to upload it to YouTube afterwards. You still could get your video taken down or get a copyright strike or anything because that music has not been authorized by YouTube. And the same is with, the vice versa, or if you are doing any kind of simulcasting. So, if you guys are just placing your content on one place, just use things from that platform's music library and you'll be fine. But if you are simulcasting or you're re-uploading it later, that's when we do recommend sticking to, those copyright-free musics. That way you're not having to juggle back and forth or trying to edit out audio and put different audio in. But that's just something to keep in mind, that they have authorized different things, so they're not able to be used back and forth in that way from the music libraries.
I feel like I'm constantly requesting people to comment, but I'll look into this too. I don't know right off the top of my head a bunch of royalty-free music libraries, but if you happen to know any royalty-free music libraries or have suggestions about how to do this, maybe just add a link below there so we can all just kind of see what might be the best way to do this. When you're adding music, it's kind of an added layer because you might want to use a mixer so that you can mix the music in and stuff too. So that might not be on the front of everybody's radar. But if anybody has any ideas for places where we can get royalty-free stuff, unless you're writing your own music, in which case you own it and you can do whatever you want with it. So if anybody's doing that too, that's another suggestion. But if you have any ideas for that, please share below, and I think I'm going to do some research on my own after this to figure out.
I know one I've used since college, so 10 years now. It was called Free Play Music. It changed to something else a few years ago, but they still have that redirect in. So Free Play Music, or whatever it's called now, is really cool. When you download the music, it's all free of charge, but it's basically like a purchase, and they will email you, full certification saying, like that your name on this date is authorized to use this music, da-da-da, so that way you do have that documentation of the license in case you need it. Another thing that I've loved doing is actually going through YouTube. And if I find, an indie artist, just someone kind of making their own music, if you reach out to them, explain what you're doing and that you'll give them full credit, 9 out of 10 times they are more than happy to give you that permission. And the same with that, then you've got that written email of them confirming, hey, you can use my music. It avoids any kind of issues down the road that way as well. So Free Play Music, and also just reaching out and supporting local indie artists.
Yeah, I also see some people in here. Dominic says Audio Network or Audio Jungle. We've used Audio Jungle before. Video Blocks, I think, is another one. They do a lot of pre-made video, but I think they do audio now as well.
I used to use a site called. Now, don't take my. You have to do your own research on this, but there's one site called Earbits, and we used to play music from that whenever. When I had another job, it would just be playing in the room before these conventions and things would start, and we'd often have like cameras running, so we had to worry about like what we were putting in there. So look into Earbits. I think it's royalty free, and it's all a lot of like they're not no name artists, but they're not people you would commonly hear of, and it's a lot of generic genres that you can pick from. So if you have like a specific thing, Earbits might be a cool one. But again, I need to look into that again too, because I'm pretty sure it's royalty free, but it might not be as easy to like download. So it might just be kind of like a ongoing. It's kind of like a Pandora or something with like royalty free music.
Yeah, I see. Dominic just posted Earbits in there, so yeah, I guess that does work.
I think that's one of them.
Yeah, freesound.org is Hot Rock put in there. So.
Love freesound.org.
Yeah.
Make a free account. It's awesome.
Yeah. So a lot of really good things. I thought there was something else someone said back here that was really good. Oh, yes, Dominic again mentioned talking about this problem that people are having is think about if you're using Restream or simulcast in two different places. You also have to be careful with that stuff. You know, if we're like if we do this live on Facebook and we use their music library and then we upload it to YouTube, and we talked about that, but what happens if you're streaming both of them live at the same time? Obviously, it's free for one, but not the other. So
yeah, you might get away with being live, but after that, your video is probably going to get pulled. So.
Yeah, it's probably not going to make it to the archive after that.
Yeah, be very careful. Just put a little extra thought before you start playing music. Just find something that's definitely 100% free before you go wasting your time.
Okay, so yeah, moral of the story is get the rights to music before you use it, and make sure that you're using it, or where you're using it, you have the rights for it.
DYH.
Yeah.
Do your homework.
Do your homework. Hey, I like that.
Yeah.
Jimmy is a professor sometimes.
Yeah.
Some days.
I've got to remind people to DYH all the time. So.
Excellent. Well, while we get queued up, and I can read through some of these comments here. Angela, if you want to maybe talk a little bit about the user group and how to join if you want. I did see somebody in here who said they're really new and they're looking forward to seeing what, I think it was Sam down there a little bit. Yeah.
What's up, Sam?
He says, I'm looking forward to learning more about its capabilities. Sam, if you have time at 4 p.m., Angela and I do a webinar in the user group. So Angela will talk a little bit about that. And yeah, so if you have specific switcher questions, we'll answer all of those there.
Come back at 4 for sure.
So Angela, I'll let you go.
Sure. So, the user group, we mention this every week, but we do have a nice little spike of people coming into the group after each show, so we do want to mention it every week. But we do have an online community on Facebook called Switcher Studio Enthusiasts. And what it is, we've got over 2,000 active members. They just share all kinds of content they created. They share tips and tricks. If anyone asks a question in the group, not only is the Switcher team in there, but all of these other members are in there, and they're more than willing to help you out. So we definitely recommend, whether you're just thinking about using Switcher, whether you're on a trial, or whether you're subscribed and you've been with us for a long time, stay in the user group. We keep all kinds of updates going through there, and there are 3 ways to join. So the first way, of course, is just to type in the name Switcher Studio Enthusiast and go to the page that way. Also, you're most likely watching this video on our Facebook page right now. If you click on groups using the menu on the left-hand side, you'll also be taken straight to the group that way. And the last way, if you already have a Switcher Studio account, log in at switcherstudio.com. That's going to take you to your user dashboard where you can click Join the Community. So regardless of which of the 3 ways that you've taken, there's going to be a short survey to fill out. It just lets us know more about how you're using Switcher and how we can make Switcher better for you. And then you'll have access into that group. And what we like to do, we just mentioned the questions, the user group questions. We bring those up on the show each week. But we've got so many users sharing their content that our last segment each week on the show is called #MadeWithSwitcher. And we like to just take, one example that really stood out to us from each week and showcase it on. I think Dan's got that clip queued up for
I do.
this
Let
week.
me get the multi-view here so you can talk a little bit about it at the same time.
Yeah, so this week is from our user Ray Halbrook. His son Curtis actually did a percussion performance using a marimba, as we learned from Jimmy.
It's a marimba.
Yes, a
Not
marimba.
a xylophone.
And that's from, he's from Oakville High School. So, we've seen before, kind of the shaky phone video trying to get, a child's performance. But Ray went beforehand, set up a couple of cameras with Switcher, and he was able to get this really nice video with different angles of his son's performance. And we like seeing all different kinds of ways people are using Switcher. It's been a while since we've seen one with a school performance, and these things are great, especially for friends and family that can't make it to a performance. They're still able to watch live from at home.
It's really cool with musical performances, especially if you're traditionally in the audience watching something, you have one vantage point and that's just what you're stuck with. But if you have an opportunity to use multiple angles, it's really interesting, especially with something that's like this artistic, media like music. You could do one video of person standing. If I wish he had one more angle, he could just kind of get a shot of just the marimba itself, and you could just see the mallets hitting on there. I think that'd be really interesting kind of perspective. Maybe if somebody, again, like a piano, put a camera right at the edge of the keys and just shoot that way, that'd be a really interesting perspective for an audience to be able to have that. They otherwise wouldn't if you were just using one camera, like you said, being the parent with the shaky iPhone sitting out there. Everybody has seen that guy out there with their phone all up in the air. So think about putting it on a tripod and just switching between it quietly and discreetly from your seat. You can see exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I really liked about it too is you talk about just having that one camera angle, and that's great for just sharing with your family or whatnot. But you're able to kind of tell the story more because he's got the lower third come up of where they're at, what's going on, and then he has his son's name come up and where he is. So I just thought that was a really cool way to kind of tell the full story of everything going on instead of just having the one camera angle.
Yeah, more angles is better. Always. Yeah. I think always. I'll say always for now, but yeah.
All the angles.
More good angles.
Cool. I think we actually had one other this is kind of a little bonus that we can talk about here, and let me pull it up. And this was something that was posted in our user group, and it's one of our Switcher users out there. He was out on a hike and took a picture and has a nice picture of him in a Switcher Studio shirt out in the wild. Always fun to see that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Get your Switcher swag.
All the Switcher swag.
Yeah, it's for sale somewhere. Where is it?
It's on our Redbubble. So
yeah, there is.
If you search on redbubble.com for Switcher Studio, we've got shirts and mugs and notebooks and wall art you can hang on your wall. So there's a lot of really cool things on there. Nice array of sizes as well if you're looking to get any of the shirts. And if there's anything we don't have for sale on there that you're interested in seeing, let us know, and it's something we can always take into consideration. Yeah,
Dominic just commented and asked where he got that shirt. That was from something a long time ago we did just to gather information about our users and whatnot. So if you filled out a survey, we sent you a shirt. So yeah, that was a while ago, but I'm glad to see some people still have them.
All right, yeah. I'm wearing a really old Switcher Studio shirt under here today, but I'm not going to pull it out right now. This is from 2014, I think. It's a really old one.
One of the originals.
It's old. It's for sure old. There it is. I'll give you a little peek into it. This is one of the original colors. So, all right.
Very nice. Very nice.
Hey, I just thought I'd share. Yeah.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Angela and Jimmy, for all that excellent insight.
4 thumbs up.
Keep the conversation going. I saw a ton of great places to get free music, so check those out. Keep the conversation. We'll get to as many comments as we can. If you have more questions about Switcher Studio, go to our website, join the user group, or you can check out our webinar at 4 p.m. Eastern. If you're watching this on demand, don't worry, we do a webinar every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, so you can join the group, and there's an event there to join, and you'll be able to tag along with Angela as we talk about Switcher. But again, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
See you guys.
Take care.